Well, the Epstein Black Book, like on day one.
On day one, roll out the Black Book.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past. That Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list. And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right? What the hell are the House Republicans doing?
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is that. I mean, there's.
That's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
Ghislaine Maxwell case. We have an update on that from the Telegraph. Turns out, headline, evidence from Jeffrey Epstein's safe went missing after an FBI raid. Court hears in Ghislaine Maxwell trial. How the hell do you lose evidence in a case this big?
Said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work.
All right, so everybody's baffled about this mystery, but I've got something here that I think will shed some light on this. But first, let's take a quick look at why people think that this might have been a murder instead of a suicide. So maximum security filler died in a federal custody at the Metropolitan Correctional Center facility with a history of tight security. But the night of his death, both guards fell asleep or falsified records. The security camera malfunctioned or was lost. He was taken off suicide watch days earlier, despite a recent attempted suicide, allegedly, and the pathologists disputed. So the official cause of death was suicide by hanging, but Dr. Michael Baden, a respected forensic pathologist and former New York City medical examiner, was hired by Epstein's brother and publicly disagreed, stating, quote, "The injuries, including a broken hyoid bone, are more consistent with homicidal strangulation than suicide." And there's a previous attempt in cellmate removal. Epstein allegedly attempted suicide a few weeks before his death, but claimed he was attacked by his cellmates. And I'm going to show you his cellmate in a second if you don't remember what he looks like. That same cellmate was a former cop facing murder charges, was moved out the day before Epstein died, leaving him alone. And the timing of the death, Epstein died one day after federal court unsealed nearly 2,000 pages of documents detailing allegations against powerful individuals. More documents were expected, and Epstein was facing serious pressure to cooperate. And by the way, this was his cellmate, so do with that what you will. But now I'm going to show you something that is the original Epstein case, and a quote from the former director of the CIA that I think will shed some light on this and make this a lot clearer why the brave and bold Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are now looking like defeated men, total hostages, like prisoners to what they can and cannot say. So check this out. So this is a book right here called The Franklin Cover-Up, written by a Nebraska senator named John DeCamp. The Franklin Cover-Up, if you haven't heard of it, was like the original Epstein blackmail ring. It took place in Nebraska, and I want to show you what the author says in the foreword. So check this out. Tell me if this doesn't shed some light on this. So starts off by saying, what do Ronald Reagan, President George Bush, Vanner CIA Director William E. Colby, Democrat presidential candidate Bob Kerrey, billionaire and second richest man in America, now have Salomon Brothers, Warren Buffett, and Ronald Roskins, current minister of the Agency for International Development, all have in common? The author asked his close friend and advisor, former CIA Director William Colby, one day in 1991. He said, I give up. Well, what could that group have in common? He said 3 things, all of them a burden at times for those who have to carry them. The 3 things are John DeCamp, a case called Franklin, and a man named Larry King. Colby says, are you serious? He said, dead serious. And I hope the word dead does not turn out to be a prophetic pronouncement, as it has for at least 15 other Franklin-related personalities. His statement to Bill Colby was not made lightly. Colby and his wife, Sally Shelton Colby, a United States ambassador under President Jimmy Carter, were at that very moment warning the author of this book to get away from the Franklin child abuse investigation, Larry King and anybody else linked with Franklin as quickly as possible for the sake of his own life and safety. Sally and Bill had never talked to him this way, he said. They sat him down, made it clear that this was not one of our routine discussions about life and health and happiness, and emphasized to him the serious nature of what and whom he was dealing with. Former director of the CIA, William Colby, said, quote, "What you have to understand, John, is that sometimes there are forces and events too big, too powerful, with so much at stake for other people and institutions that you cannot do anything about them, no matter how evil or wrong they are, and no matter how dedicated or sincere you are about how much evidence you have. That's simply one of the hard facts of life you have to face. You have done your part. You tried to expose the evil and wrongdoing. It has hurt you terribly, but it's not killed you up to this point. I'm telling you, get out of this before it does. Sometimes things are just too big for us to deal with, and we have to step aside and let history take its course." He said, "For you, this is one of those times." And shortly after this, the guy, William Colby, ends up dead in a canoe accident with suspiciously dinner still on the table. But anyway, point being that somebody's obviously telling Kash and Dan to do and say certain things. Somebody's telling Pam Bondi to do and say certain things. We just had the thing the other day where James O'Keefe had to be the one to say they have the footage, they're watching the footage, and threaten Pam Bondi that they're going to put it out and say that she knew.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Now, this is the first time an official has publicly acknowledged that videos of Epstein and his victims exist. What you may not know is just 9 days prior, the Attorney General had a very similar conversation with a total stranger in a restaurant.
Do you know when the Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon. The FBI's been.
Okay.
So.
Any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
In the past, officials have spoken about the, quote, mountain of evidence in the Epstein case, but they've never, previous to that moment, acknowledged on the existence of videos of, quote, little kids. Just a few days later, at 2 p.m. on May 1st, our reporter sent the AG's office the text of the recording. We asked why this detail had not been disclosed to the public, but was instead being told to a random stranger at a restaurant. The Attorney General used almost the exact same language as she did with the stranger in the restaurant, language that we shared with her press office.
There are tens of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Now, we hesitated to publish this story, but believe, like we did yesterday, that the public has a right to know. And this one raises serious questions. On one hand, why did our country's highest law enforcement official share this information first not with the American people, but with a self-described nanny at brunch? But more importantly, why was this information held back in the first place? Does this show that a government apparatus is still working behind the scenes to protect powerful people involved in the scandal?
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode and found this information useful or valuable, consider signing up for my book club. Link is below, QR code right here, and we get into all kinds of crazy conversations and research and interesting things that you probably won't hear or find anywhere else. So if that appeals to you, consider signing up. Until next time, much love.